My daughter-in-law, Brenda, held up the brand new smartphone, its screen gleaming under the restaurant lights. "Isn't it beautiful?" she squealed, kissing my son, Mark. The entire table, filled with her friends and family for her 30th birthday, erupted in applause. She glanced over at me, a flicker of a smirk on her perfectly made-up face. It was a look I knew well, the one that said, "See, this is what I deserve. And you have nothing." She had no idea that my gift, the one I was about to give, would burn her entire world to the ground. She thought the old, cracked phone she'd given me a few months ago was a symbol of my irrelevance, a pity gift for a lonely old woman. But she didn't know it was the key that had unlocked every single one of her dirty, backstabbing secrets. The secrets I was about to play on the giant projector screen right behind her head. They were all celebrating a life built on my money and my silence, and I was about to reclaim every single cent, with interest. You might be wondering what could possibly drive a mother-in-law to publicly humiliate her own family on a day meant for celebration. To understand why I did it, you have to go back to the day she handed me that phone, with a smile that was pure poison and words that dripped with fake sympathy. It started 3 months ago, on a Tuesday. Tuesdays were my day to babysit my grandson, Leo. Brenda and Mark both worked, or at least that's what I thought. It was a routine I'd fallen into after my husband, George, passed away. I'd arrive at 8 a.m. and stay until Mark got home around 6 p.m. I cooked, I cleaned, I did their laundry, and I poured all the love I had into their son. I never asked for a dime. Seeing Leo's smile was payment enough, or so I told myself. That afternoon, Brenda came home early, which was unusual. She sashayed into the living room, dropping a designer handbag on the floor that probably cost more than my monthly pension. "Helen," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, "I have something for you." She reached into her bag and pulled out a smartphone with a spiderweb of cracks across the screen. "I just upgraded. I was going to trade this in, but then I thought of you. So you won't be so lonely." I took the phone from her hand. It felt cold and used. "Oh, Brenda, you didn't have to," I murmured, the familiar words of politeness coming out automatically. I felt a hot flush of shame creep up my neck. I knew exactly what this was. It wasn't a gift, it was a handout. It was a way for her to feel generous while reminding me of my place. I was the charity case, the lonely old woman who needed her cast-offs. "Don't be silly," she chirped, waving a dismissive hand. "Mark and I were just saying how worried we are that you're all alone in that big house. This way you can text us or look at pictures of Leo. We'll feel so much better knowing you're connected." My home wasn't just a big house. It was the house I had shared with my husband for 40 years, the house where I raised my son. To her, it was just property. My son, Mark, walked in then, kissing Brenda on the cheek. He saw the phone in my hand. "Oh, great! You gave it to her? See, Mom? Now you can be like everyone else." He smiled at me, but it didn't reach his eyes. He didn't see the condescension. He only saw his perfect, thoughtful wife. In their world, I was the problem to be managed, the loose end to be tied up. My feelings were an inconvenience they'd long since learned to ignore. Since he married Brenda, it was like a fog had settled over him. He used to be such a thoughtful boy, but now he just echoed her opinions, seeing me through her dismissive eyes. For 2 weeks, the phone sat on my kitchen counter, a monument to my humiliation. I didn't know how to use it. The truth is, I was afraid of it. Finally, one lonely evening, I picked it up. I managed to turn it on, my fingers fumbling with the screen. I just wanted to see a picture of Leo, like Brenda had suggested. I tapped on what I thought was the photo gallery, but my finger slipped and opened a little green icon instead. A list of names appeared. At the top was one labelled Jessica Sis. Below it was a preview of the last message. "OMG, the old bat actually took the phone. I thought she'd be too proud." My heart stopped, my blood ran cold. The old bat. She was talking about me. With trembling hands, I tapped on the conversation. And there it was, my life, my sacrifices, my love, all of it, reduced to a running joke between Brenda and her sister. I sat there, frozen in my quiet kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. I scrolled up. My fingers, which had been so clumsy just moments before, now moved with a sickening purpose. The conversation went back months, maybe even years. Jessica: how was babysitting duty today? Brenda: ugh, endless. She hovered all day, asked if Leo had a warm enough hat, like I don't know how to dress my own kid. I can't wait till he's in preschool full-time so I don't have to see her face 3 times a week. Another one. Jessica: did you ask her for the money for the car repair? Brenda: tried to. She gave me that sad widow speech about how her pension is limited. Limited. Mark's dad left her that house, paid in full, plus his life insurance. She's sitting on a gold mine and crying poor. It's disgusting. My breath hitched. They had come to me a month ago, saying their car's transmission had failed and the repair was $3,000. I gave them half of my monthly income, eating nothing but toast and soup for 2 weeks to make up for it. The betrayal was a physical pain, a knife twisting in my chest. I had sacrificed for them. I had given them my time, my love, my limited funds, and all along, they saw me as a dragon guarding a treasure they felt entitled to. My husband George and I had worked our whole lives for that home, for that small nest egg. It was meant for my security, not her luxury. I kept scrolling, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall, and then I found it. The message that changed everything, the one that extinguished the last spark of love I had for the woman my son married. Brenda, good news. I talked to Mark's real estate buddy, Kevin. He said we can get the power of attorney paperwork drawn up. Mark is on board. He thinks it's to help manage her finances in case she gets sick. Jessica: OMG, is it finally happening? Brenda: yes. Once we have that, we list the house. Kevin says it'll sell in a week. We take the money, put her in the cheapest decent home we can find, and we are finally free. No more asking, no more guilt trips. We just take what's ours. A cold, terrifying clarity washed over me. The shock turned to ice in my veins. They weren't just mocking me, they were actively plotting to steal my entire life from under me, my home, my security, my dignity. They wanted to erase me and my own son. My Mark was a part of it. At that moment, the hurt died, and something else was born in its place: rage. A cold, patient, and methodical rage. She hadn't given me a phone, she'd given me a weapon, and I was going to learn how to use it. The next morning, I did not cry. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and picked up the phone again. My first step was to save the evidence. I spent hours watching tutorial videos on my old desktop computer, teaching myself how to take a screenshot. My hands were shaky at first, but with every click flash of the screen, I felt a piece of my power returning. I captured every single message, every cruel joke, every detail of their vile plan. Then, I learned how to email them to myself, creating a digital file I named simply Insurance. I saved them to a flash drive and put it in my husband's old lockbox. I factory reset the phone, erasing my digital footprints, and left it on the counter as if I'd given up on it. My second step was to find a lawyer. I didn't want a local one who might know my son. I looked up the best estate lawyers in the city, an hour's drive away. I found a woman named Miss Davis, whose website described her as a fierce advocate for seniors. I made an appointment for the following week. I walked into her polished office feeling small and scared, but I held my head high. I didn't tell her the whole story at first. I just said, "My son and his wife are pressuring me to sign a power of attorney, and I want to understand my rights." She was kind but direct. She asked to see my late husband's will and our financial statements. I brought her the dusty accordion file George had meticulously organized, the one I hadn't touched in years. Miss Davis spent a long time reading, her expression unreadable. Finally, she took off her glasses and looked at me. "Helen," she said, her voice soft, "did your husband ever discuss his investments with you?" I shook my head. "He handled the money. He just told me I'd be taken care of." She turned a page. "Helen, you're not just taken care of. According to this, your husband left the house to you in an ironclad trust that no one can touch while you're alive. Furthermore, this portfolio of stocks and bonds, he was a very wise investor. You are not a woman with a small pension. You are a very wealthy woman." She named a number that made the air leave my lungs. A number with 7 figures. Brenda and Mark didn't know. George never liked to flash his wealth. We lived simply. They saw a modest house and a frugal widow. They had no idea they were trying to swindle a millionaire. A cold smile touched my lips for the first time in weeks. Their greed was about to be their ruin. Miss Davis and I started to lay a new plan. Not just a defense, but an offense. The next 2 months were the hardest of my life. I had to continue playing the part of the meek, simple-minded widow. I still babysat Leo, still cleaned their house, still smiled politely when Brenda made a condescending comment. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I would walk into their home, my heart pounding with a mixture of hatred and grief. I would watch my son, so blind to the viper he had married, and force myself to ask about his day. I'd hug my grandson, whispering to him that I loved him, the only pure and true thing left in our fractured family. Brenda's smug confidence grew with each passing day, certain she had me under her thumb. Inside, I was a general planning a war. After my babysitting duties, I'd go to the library and use their computers, researching every angle Ms. Davis and I discussed. I read about real estate fraud, elder abuse, and embezzlement. Knowledge was my armor. Just as Miss Davis predicted, the moment of truth arrived. One evening, Mark and Brenda sat me down at my own kitchen table. They had a stack of papers and a pen. "Mom," Mark began, his voice laced with a rehearsed sincerity, "we've been worried about you handling everything on your own." "This is just a formality, a power of attorney. It lets me help you with bills and things in case your health ever fails." Brenda put her hand on mine. Her touch felt like a spider. "We just want to make sure you're always safe and looked after, Helen." My script was ready. I looked at the papers, feigning confusion. Oh my! This is a lot to take in. George always told me never to sign anything without reading it thoroughly. My eyesight isn't what it used to be. Can I just hold on to these for a week or so to look them over? Brenda's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course," she said, but her tone was clipped. Mark looked relieved, happy to avoid a difficult conversation. They left, confident that the clueless old woman would eventually sign. That night, I went back to the screenshots, searching for anything I might have missed. There was a conversation I had previously overlooked, dismissing it as idle gossip. "Jessica, are you still seeing him? Is that smart?" Brenda, "Of course. He's the only thing keeping me sane. He's so much more ambitious than Mark. Once we get the house money, it's goodbye suburbia, hello new life, a new life with another man." My son wasn't just being betrayed financially. He was the temporary bank account for his wife's escape plan. The text mentioned her real estate buddy, Kevin, several times. On a hunch, I hired a private investigator Ms. Davis recommended. It only took him 48 hours. He sent me a folder with a dozen photographs, pictures of Brenda and Kevin, the real estate agent, holding hands over dinner, a picture of them kissing outside a hotel. They weren't just planning to sell my house, they were planning to build their future on its ruins and on my son's broken heart. This was the final piece of ammunition. The stage was now set for her 30th birthday party. Brenda had chosen the most expensive Italian restaurant in the city for her party. The private room was filled with flowers, balloons, and about 30 of her closest friends and family. She floated through the room in a silk dress that shimmered under the chandeliers, accepting praise and expensive gifts. Mark followed her like a puppy, his face glowing with adoration. He'd told me proudly that he'd used a chunk of their savings to make the party perfect for her. I knew the truth. He was spending his future on a woman who had already discarded him in her heart. I sat at the end of the table, a quiet grey figure in a simple cardigan. I ate my sea bass, sipped my water, and watched. I watched Brenda laugh a little too loudly at a joke told by Kevin, the real estate agent, who was seated right next to her. I watched Mark put his arm around his wife, completely oblivious to the way her body stiffened slightly at his touch. I felt no pity for him, not yet. Blindness was a choice, and he had chosen it for years. An hour before the party, I had arrived early and spoken to the manager. I told him I had a surprise slideshow of photos for my daughter-in-law and asked if he could help me connect my laptop to their large projector screen. He was a kind young man, happy to assist the sweet old woman. My laptop was connected and hidden under the tablecloth at my feet, a single cable running to the projector. On the desktop was one folder containing my meticulously organized screenshots and the private investigator's photos. After the main course, Mark stood up, tapping a knife against his champagne flute. "If I could have everyone's attention," he began, beaming. He gave a long, rambling speech about how Brenda was the light of his life, his soulmate, the most generous and kind person he had ever known. People dabbed their eyes. Brenda preened, soaking it all in. When he finished, everyone applauded. Then Mark turned to me. "Mum, would you like to say a few words?" A hush fell over the room. All eyes were on me. Brenda's smile was a mask of strained tolerance. This was it. I slowly got to my feet, my hands perfectly steady. "Thank you, Mark," I said, my voice clear and calm. "Brenda, dear, I'd love to say a few words. In fact, I'd like to thank you for the wonderful gift you gave me a few months ago. The old phone. You said it was so I wouldn't be lonely, and you were right. It has taught me so much." I reached under the table and clicked the mouse. The projector screen behind Brenda flickered to life. It wasn't a photo of Leo. It was a screenshot of a text message, blown up for everyone to see, from Brenda to Jessica Sis. OMG, the old bat actually took the phone. I thought she'd be too proud. A collective gasp went through the room. Brenda, who had been smiling for a photo, froze. Her face went pale, the colour draining from it like water down a sink. Her sister, Jessica, who was sitting across the table, looked like she had seen a ghost. Mark just looked confused. "Mum, what is that? Is this some kind of joke?" "I'm not joking, Mark," I said, my voice level. I clicked the mouse again. The next screenshot appeared. Brenda. She gave me that sad widow speech about how her pension is limited. Limited! She's sitting on a gold mine and crying poor. It's disgusting. "This was after I gave you $1,500 for your car repair," I said, looking directly at Brenda. "The money I lived on soup and toast for 2 weeks to afford. But you saw it as your right to have, didn't you? A down payment on the fortune you were planning to steal." Brenda shot to her feet. "Turn it off. Helen, turn that off right now. This is insane. You're making this up. Those are fake." "Am I?" I clicked again. The text about the power of attorney filled the screen. Brenda. "Mark is on board. He thinks it's to help manage her finances. Once we have that, we list the house. We take the money, put her in the cheapest decent home we can find, and we are finally free." The room was dead silent now, except for Brenda's ragged breathing. All eyes went from the screen to Mark, whose face had crumpled in horror and disbelief. He turned to his wife, his voice a choked whisper. "Brenda, what is this? Tell me this isn't real." Brenda stared at the screen, then at the faces of her friends, all looking at her with shock and disgust. Her mask of superiority had shattered, leaving only ugly, cornered desperation. "I didn't just learn that you thought I was a burden, Brenda," I continued, my voice cutting through the silence. I learned you were planning to steal my home, my memories, my entire life. And you, Mark, I said, turning to my son, who now looked completely broken. You told me it was to help me. Did you know you were helping her make me homeless? Did you know about the cheapest decent home she had picked out for your mother? He could only shake his head, speechless, as the truth crashed down around him. But I wasn't finished. The final act of betrayal was yet to come. It's been a year since that night. I'm writing this from the sunroom of my new penthouse, looking out over a city that glitters like a carpet of diamonds. The silence here is a comfortable one, filled not with loneliness, but with peace. My days are my own. I take art classes, I volunteer at the Children's Hospital, and I have lunch with old friends I'd lost touch with while I was busy being a free nanny. My husband's fortune, managed now by a team of professionals Ms. Davis helped me hire, has not changed who I am, but it has given me the one thing I'd lost: freedom. The fallout from Brenda's birthday party was immediate and total. As I predicted, Kevin, the real estate agent, was fired after my complaint, backed by his company's legal team who wanted to avoid a lawsuit, was verified. He dropped Brenda the instant she was no longer a potential lottery ticket. Her parents, humiliated, sold their local business and moved out of state. Last I heard, Brenda was working a retail job, living in a small apartment 2 towns over. She lost her husband, her reputation, and her access to a life of luxury she felt so entitled to. She has tried to contact me through lawyers, asking for a settlement to stay quiet. I told Ms. Davis to send back a single sheet of paper with 2 words printed on it. No thanks. Mark suffered the most, in a different way. The shock of his wife's dual betrayal sent him into a deep depression. He lost his job, his home in the divorce, and his self-respect. He had to hit rock bottom before he could start to climb back up. He's been in therapy for 8 months. He started calling me 3 months ago. At first, I didn't answer. Then, I started listening to his voicemails. They weren't pleas for money or help. They were just apologies, raw, broken, and honest. He was finally taking responsibility for his weakness, for his willingness to stand by and let his wife disrespect and plot against his own mother. Last week, I agreed to meet him for coffee. He looked older, thinner, but his eyes were clear for the first time in years. He cried, and he apologized again, without excuses. He didn't ask for anything, we just talked. It was a small beginning, a tiny seed of a new relationship that might one day grow. He has a long way to go to earn back my trust, but for the first time, I believe he's capable of it. My revenge was never about destroying my son, but about forcing him to see the truth. Brenda's gift of that old phone was meant to be an insult, but in the end, it was my salvation. It gave me back my voice, my power, and my life.